Hello everyone. I think it's time to catch up. Let's do more of my monthly reading wrap-ups. I know we did January and then I've thrown a couple videos in there, but I'd like to start trying to get caught up with the present month. So we're going to do February. As you can see, I'm not at home right now. I'm in a hotel room. I travel a lot for work, so if I'm going to try to get one video out a week, sometimes this might happen. I'm also using my work camera, which is not as nice, but hey, you get what you pay for with this channel, right? Alright, so in February, I didn't actually read as many books as some other months. It's alright. First book I read was Marlene the Horror Queen by Lila Pearl. It is a young adult book published in 1985. So I read a physical copy of this one, which I don't have anymore, nor do I have with me, obviously, even if I did have it. I picked this one up just because of the title. It was also an Avon Flair book, who published a lot of good vintage 90s young adult horror books. I wasn't sure if this one was even going to be horror, but it had horror in the title, and I found it at a used bookstore, and that was good enough for me. I picked it up because I figured it would be a short, fun read. Short, yes. Fun, it's not bad. I like the writing. I thought it was well written. It kind of is about this girl living in this apartment complex. She's like a teenager, and she meets this other girl named Marlene, who's kind of like quirky and cool and is into horror movies. And it's just kind of their adventures over the summer. But the thing is, like, not a whole lot actually happens. It's just kind of a very wholesome yet uneventful little tale through their summer. It has not much to do with horror at all. I think if you want like a sort of vintage nostalgic 90s cute little wholesome summer romp, then it's fine. But don't expect anything horror related, really. I think I was misled with the title. So that's alright. I'll give it a 2.5 because there's really nothing wrong with it, but I gotta say I didn't, I didn't enjoy it that much. It just kind of is what it is. But yeah, next one I read was The Reformatory by Tananarive Due, published in 2023. This was a book that I read for my local horror book club. It is not something I would have normally picked up. I had heard of Tananarive Due, but didn't know much about her. I don't know, I don't keep up with the new stuff as well as I should. But I am so glad that I'm in my horror book club because this was probably the best book I've read in a long time. It's advertised as a horror novel, and I think a lot of people have kind of argued that it's not. And I would argue that back. I think that it definitely is a horror novel. Anyways, the plot is basically takes place in Jim Crow era. Is it Florida? I think it's, yeah, Florida, Gracetown, Florida. And it's just about this little African-American kid and his family, and he basically just, in like a schoolboy altercation, kicks this other kid who was kind of being a jerk and had it coming. But because of the race relations at the time, he ends up getting sent to this reformatory for basically unruly boys. And at this reformatory, it is both A, haunted by ghosts, but also is the, I can't even remember now, headmaster or whatever he's called, is basically just like a horrible, evil person. And it's interesting because the ghosts, they call them haints, are not necessarily the scary part of the story. The scary part of the story is just being a black person in the South in America during this time. I mean, it was like a horror movie for them. And this book is so well written. It's very long, like 600 some pages, but I was hooked the whole time. I didn't think that any part of the story was unnecessary. Nothing needed to be cut out. Tananarive is just such an excellent storyteller, and I loved it. I honestly don't know of any flaws that I can say, so I would give this one 5 stars, and I definitely recommend checking it out. It is it is like a harder to read. Not hard to read, but harder. The subject matter is dark. It's not like a fun horror novel, but it's very well done. It's an excellent book. So after that, apparently I wanted something a little lighter. So I read the second Spooksville book by Christopher Pike. This is The Howling Ghost, published in 1995. So Christopher Pike is one of my favorite young adult horror novelists. He wrote a couple adult horror novels, and then he had this series of middle grade horror books, similar to like Goosebumps, called Spooksville. And the covers are very cool in these. And I read the first one like a year ago, and honestly didn't really like it. And I wasn't really looking to pick up the rest of them, and I still might not. But I found the second one and grabbed it because it was cheap and gave it a read. And I did like this one more than the first one. The story is about these kids who go to investigate this like mysterious disappearance of another child at this lighthouse on this like rocky coast. And basically there's this ghost this like woman, the old woman ghost that haunts the lighthouse. I mean, it's nothing to write home about. It's just a little fun, spooky story for kids. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was better than the first Spooksville book. But I'm still not entirely sold on the Spooksville series. So we'll see if I give the third one a chance or not. But this just gets 3 stars from me. It's just, it's fine. It does what it's supposed to do. The third book that I read, I'm just reading all the kids' books this month apparently. I think it was a busy month and I didn't have a lot of time, unfortunately. Oh, actually, I think I spent most of this month reading a much chunkier book. Well, also the Reformatory was big, but I was reading another big one after that I didn't finish until March, so I'm counting that one for March, but I think I spent most of February reading that. Anyways, next book I finished was Animorphs number 25, The Extreme. So I have been reading my way through the Animorphs series as an adult. I am on book 25, or I was at this point. And I have been thoroughly enjoying it. I didn't read Animorphs as a kid, and man, was that a mistake. They are so good. I'm not just saying that for like a nostalgia factor. I think they're genuinely fantastic. The themes are much more mature and darker than I would have ever imagined. It's also just so much fun, and the world that K.A. Applegate has built is really, really interesting and well done, I think. So that being said, book 25, The Extreme, has the Animorphs go to the North Pole. Ooh! On the cover, there's Marco with changing into a polar bear. So the thing with this one is I started reading it and something just felt off, and I couldn't quite identify what was wrong for me. And then I looked it up, and basically K.A. Applegate wrote 1 through 24 and then started hiring ghostwriters. She would write an outline and they would write the book, and then she would make some finishing touches, I guess. I think she writes a couple more as the series goes on, but this was the first one that was not fully written by her, and in my opinion, it shows. Something just doesn't feel right with it. The story was It should have been way more exciting. Animorphs go to North Pole. I don't know. It was the first one I was really disappointed by, so I gave it 2 stars. Maybe that's harsh, but I just love the series so much, and so I just found this one to be a bit of a disappointment, a bit of a letdown, and I really hope that as I keep going, maybe the ghostwriters figure it out a little bit, the tone of the series a little better. Next one I read this one on ebook. This was Unsold, Cradle Number 1 by Will White. This was published in 2016. So I've been getting more into fantasy, and as such, my my wife's sister bought me the first 3 of these on Kindle. It is a 12-book series, fantasy series that a lot of people say is kind of like anime, but in book form. I don't like anime. So this is kind of like progression fantasy in that you have basically the weakest person in this world almost in terms of their magic. And the books just show him as he progressively becomes more and more powerful to, I would assume, eventually becoming one of the most powerful people in this universe. And so I think it's just called progression fantasy, and people are just satisfied by watching this progression. And so when I got these, I was like a little hesitant because people kept saying it was like anime in book form, and I don't like anime. But also a lot of people say you just got to get through the first book or first 2 books and then it's great. And I was like, all right, well, we'll see. That being said, I kind of loved it. Maybe it's just because I'm new to fantasy, I don't know, but I thought that the first book was fantastic. I had a lot of fun with it. To explain exactly what it's about is, I don't want to give anything away, but like I said, a very weak character in terms of the magic system in his world begins to sort of break out and go on an adventure and become more powerful along the way. I can see how it is like anime or inspired by anime or whatever, but maybe I prefer that in prose form to visual form, but I loved it. So I give this one 4 stars, and I'm looking forward to reading the rest of them. I've already read book 2. It's so weird doing this for older stuff. Alright, next one I read, and I actually listened to this one on Audible, was The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones, published in 2020. I heard a lot of good things about Stephen Graham Jones, and so I figured I would check out one of his books. He is a horror writer of Native American descent, and as such, this is a horror book that takes place following some Native American people in present day. This was an interesting. I liked it. I didn't love it. It's basically about this group of friends who you find out. I don't know how much to say without giving it away, but they went hunting where they shouldn't have gone. They killed this, a deer that they shouldn't have killed, and are now basically being haunted by this spirit of this deer. So it's a very unique story. And a lot of people have complained about the way that Stephen Graham Jones writes. It's very casual. It's very it feels like someone is just telling you a story. And I felt like it worked for this book sometimes, and sometimes I found it hard to follow. A lot of people do describe it, his writing style, as being kind of jarring and hard to follow. I think overall I followed it and enjoyed it. I think because you follow multiple of these friends and their stories, I think some of the stories work really, really well for me. Other of the stories kind of drag for me or were not as interesting. So I don't know, a bit of a mixed bag for me. I gave it 3 stars. I just think it's, I liked it. I didn't love it. Yeah, I think it will be a bit divisive for people in terms of the writing style, but I wasn't super bothered by it. And the last book I read this month, which of course was also a book on Audible, because it is Bobiverse Book 2 for We Are Many by Dennis E. Taylor. And a lot of people say, how about what I say? I say that I really enjoy the narrator, which is Ray Porter, and I believe that Dennis E. Taylor kind of got big, and the series got big because it took off on Audible, because people really find that Ray Porter, the narrator of the audiobooks, really understands the tone of this character Bob and the humor, and does a very good job reading these books, and perhaps it even enhances the experience. I guess that it was published in 2017. I guess while I'm on the subject, a lot of people on the internet and booktube and stuff seem to have a problem with audiobooks. They're like, oh, does it even count? Did you even read the book? And I don't subscribe to that. I love audiobooks. I love reading physical books. I like reading books on my Kindle. I think whatever manner you want to experience the story in is fantastic. Like, does it count? That's ridiculous. You experience the story. It's like someone read it to you instead of you reading it yourself. I spend a lot of time in cars and on airplanes for work, and I love audiobooks, and I will not apologize for that. So, Bobiverse Book 2, I talked about Book 1 in my January video, kind of going over the general synopsis. So Book 1 just kind of ends with Bob and these many probe clones of Bob exploring the universe and having many different side adventures. And then it just kind of ends. And Book 2 just kind of starts. And then it just kind of ends. And that's the thing with the Bobiverse books, is there's not one overarching storyline. There's no end goal. It's just Bob in his many iterations having various adventures and problems throughout the universe. And so there's multiple storylines. Some are more interesting than others. And ultimately, these books could go on forever because Bob could go on forever. And there's infinite number of Bobs. And so if you like the Bobiverse books, each one is just more Bob adventures, just a continuation, and it doesn't really follow kind of a normal story structure in that you've got the rising action and the falling action, the climax, and no, it's just more Bob adventures, and they stop and they end, and then the next one comes. And so I, so far, am not tired of it, and I like the Bob adventures. So this is another 4-star read for me, and I've already read the 3rd one this month. I'm filming it the month that I post this, May, and it's similar. It's like more Bob adventures, and thus far I'm on board. So 4 stars. Yeah, that's all I read in the month of February. Hopefully I can get this one up and start getting caught up again. All I have to do is March and April. That'll be caught up. So, all right. See you guys next time.